The Prydwen is a modified and armored Brotherhood of Steel airship that flies throughout the skies of the Commonwealth. The vessel serves multiple roles for the Brotherhood, including those of aircraft carrier, command center, clinical, personnel quarters, equipment maintenance bay, and research facility. It is, for all intents and purposes, an airborne military base, as quoted from the Fallout 4 Wikipedia page on the airship Prydwen, which is a flying airship that acts like a helicarrier, which sounds like something only possible in the Fallout 4 universe or other related sci-fi games. However, history paints a different picture. The Prydwen is essentially a mothership, which is a large vehicle that leads, serves, and carries other smaller vehicles, as quoted from Wikipedia. The idea of the mothership comes from early World War I designs and slowly evolved throughout the 1950s. The early interwar period had Zeppelins, and during World War II there were experiments with a bomber that was supposed to be helped by parasite fighters designed by the Soviets, and the parasite fighters were basically little fighters carried by the bomber that would kind of harass and defend the bombers. The Japanese worked with kamikaze planes, which is essentially were planes that carried small explosive aircraft that their only purpose was essentially a man-guided missile, which is a quite horrific thought. And even nowadays, we still have kind of motherships, and they're basically planes that go in the air, and then they launch airships on top of. However, the idea of the airship died in the 1950s, as this great new thing came out called mid-air refueling. Yeah, it turns out it's a lot easier just to have a fuel ship in the air and refuel those ships that are in the air than it is to have a giant mass ship with a humongous wingspan and lots of steel, and that if it goes like careening into the ground, it destroys all the other ships it's carrying. It turns out it's not the best idea, and so in the 1950s when mid-air refueling took off, that plan kind of died. Now, there were two aircrafts built during the interwar period, and the interwar period is basically the period between World War I and World War II, hence interwar, and they are the Macan and Akron. And essentially they're giant flying zeppelins that carried parasite fighters. The Akron carried 3 biplanes, while the Macan carried 4, and the biplanes that were being carried were the F-9C Sparrowhawks. Now, the Sparrowhawks happened to have 2 Browning machine guns for its time period and had a crew of 1. Now, how the Zeppelins carried the Sparrowhawks is quite extraordinary, and it was done via hook/trapeze maneuver. Essentially, a hook, quote-unquote, was held under the airship, where a trapeze was then kind of lowered to hook onto the biplane, which then dropped off the hook, did its reconnaissance mission, or defended the airship from enemy fighters, and then got rehooked onto by the airship via a trapeze that dangled, then picked it back up onto the airship, and it flew away. As crazy as that sounds. Now, the Akron-class airships were considered to be the largest helium-based airship ever constructed. They were both 785 feet in length, and that's only 20 feet short of a hydrogen-based Hindenburg. And as impressive as these ships were, they lived very unfortunate short lives. Built in June 23, 1933, the Macan only lasted around 2 years, doing only training missions before destabilizing in a storm on the 12th of February 1935 off the coast of California. The central ring had collapsed and the ship ended up sinking into the ocean, causing the death of 2 crewmen on board. On the 29th of January 2010, the Macan had entered the National Registry of Historic Places, and its location hidden a marine sanctuary, forever to be the grave of those who perished. However, before entering the National Registry, there had been multiple expeditions made to collect pictures of the wreckage and even salvaging some collectibles. Now, the Akron was far less fortunate. It was commissioned on the 27th of October 1931, and it as well crashed only 2 years later in a much more horrific storm. It was taken up in severe gusts in the storm and was thrown up and down rapidly in the storm, ripping apart and slamming into the water, tearing off its lower fin, and finally crashing into the sea. A German merchant ship saw the wreckage and sailed out to find any survivors, finding only a handful of them. 73 out of 76 of the crewmen on board had died. This was due to a lack of life jackets and the inability to lower life rafts in time. After the crash, all airships were required to have life jackets. This is the reason that the Macan, which crashed a lot later than the Akron, lost only 2 crewmen. Now, the goal of both ships was to lead scouting missions the same way that the Germans had done so in World War I with their Zeppelins. But this time they would have parasite fighters that would extend the vision of the airship, essentially, but would also protect it from attacks. this was never to be built off of after the loss of both ships and the Akron hailing the highest death toll of any airship crash in U.S. history. The experimentation of the mothership when it comes to Zeppelins died, but in a way it lives on forever in Fallout 4, so there you go. Hey, thanks for watching to the end of the video. Got a little somber towards the end, but hey, that's history for you. Stick around, I've got new video ideas coming out, every whatever, and stick tuned to whenever I upload on this channel. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a like and or subscribe to the bottom.